a few seconds for everything to land.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Hello, hello.
What is up, guys?
Hello.
I was over here jamming.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And look who's here, Miss Zuri. How are you?
Oh, I think we might have a frozen, but that's okay.
Yeah, we may have a frozen, but that's all right. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. Well, as people file into the room, this is Marlon Weems. I am the publisher of the Journeyman newsletter. And this is I guess I could say this is a special edition of the Journeyman Unfiltered. And I am here with a cavalcade of my friends that, and we have a little bit of an announcement to make. And I'll just jump to it as people are coming into the room, and we will try to get everybody situated and take it from there. And I'll just go around the room and introduce my friends. Zuri. Hello, Zuri. Can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us. But there is Sherry Dunn, who's the author of Qualified. And I guess, Sherry, if you want to say a minute about your publication.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My Substack is Qualified at the Intersection. It looks at the intersection of race and everything, race and politics, race and culture, race and media. And that's kind of my lane. It's named after my book, Qualified, How Competency Checking and Race Collide at Work. So Qualified is the Substack, and some of you know about it.
And of course, everybody knows my good friend Arturo Dominguez. The man needs no introduction.
The resident
troublemaker. Still do one.
I'm going to introduce.
I was going to
him.
say some of my folks may not know him.
For those who don't know, he is the publisher of Decolonized Journalism, and he is the person that I go to whenever I want to talk about anything to do with immigration, anything to do with just the anything south of the border. And Arturo, I'll let you jump in and say a few words.
No, yeah, I published the Decolonized Journalism newsletter here on Substack, editor-in-chief of Antagonist Mag, where I basically cross-publish most of my stuff. And yeah, I've done a lot of stuff in policing, justice arena, ICE, border patrol, immigration, Latin America, things like that. A lot of Latino focus, but yeah, that's mainly where my stuff is.
And last but not least is Zuri Stevens. Zuri, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Perfect, perfect. Those gremlins really get out of control sometimes.
It's the feds. It's the feds.
Yes, they are. So Zuri, if you don't mind, just a few words. I will say this: Arturo and Zuri, I knew before Substack from the days that I was, trying to be a writer on Medium, and I knew Zuri as Rebecca Stevens A.
Yeah.
So yeah, we go way back. But if you will, a few words.
Thanks so much, Marlon. It's so good to see you all, and I'm just so happy to be with you in this cohort doing the work that we do. I read each and every one of your work, and it makes me feel so empowered. And it's Arturo, your work for my mental health is it's medicine, it's therapeutic.
Awesome.
So with that, I will just say, so why are we all here? Well, if anyone that has been following me for, I would say, the last year, aside from talking about finance and culture and all the various things, one of the, um, oh, I don't know, a burr in my saddle, so to speak, has been, um, um, for one thing, the flood of celebrity celebrity journalists, I guess, is the best description. Folks from the various areas of news media, folks from TikTok that have flooded here. And originally, I was like, well, why don't these guys kind of help us? Why don't they pick us up? And why don't they do this? And then I started to think about, because Substack gives these folks a lot of tools that we don't have. And I was like, well, why didn't Substack help us? And I complained, and Arturo and I got into some conversations with some
Yeah.
Substack folks. And at a certain point, it just hit me one day. Well, you know what? These cats are never, they're doing what they're doing. And if you're waiting on them, then that's probably not a good business plan. So, what do you do with that? And one day I would like to say I went to the library and studied up, but actually what happened was me and a glass of Woodford Reserve sat down on the computer and just got to work. And I came up with this idea, which is why we're here. And the idea is what we'll call the Journeyman Media Network. And essentially, it is a collective of creators that have come together, not so much to work for me, but that's why we use the word collective, because everybody has contributes a piece of the puzzle, if you will. And so this is sort of the reveal, I guess you could say. There's one other member, and I think she's having some, maybe some technical issues. Dr. Allison Wills, who again, from that medium cohort, that's how we all know each other. But from here, I think the point of doing it in this way and not doing a press release was so that we could talk about the what, the why, the who, and all of the pieces of the puzzle. And the way I started to think about it was, and I guess this kind of goes back to, my background. Everything's a presentation. So, in terms of media consolidation, I've already hit that point. I think it's one of those things that if we're not prepared for, and if we try to approach it as individuals, then we're probably, we're going to have varying degrees of success. And by the way, Sherry, Arturo, Zuri, you guys feel free to jump in here, because, I am a little bit of a, I don't want to say windbag, but I can talk. So the idea is to basically pull a group of people together. And this was for me. The idea was people that I trust, people whose audiences trust them. And I think part of it in the background of my mind was that, there are other people that are doing some similar things. However, those groups, in my view, do not appear to be very diverse. And I felt like that was something that, with the network of people that I know that are in this room, that's something that I could try to change. And, don't let the talk about DEI fool you. This is an all-star team in my mind. And I think this is the start. It's not the end, it's the beginning. So, this is kind of how I see where we are right now. We've got legacy media, and you got layoffs, you got mergers. We were just talking earlier about Skydance Paramount, which is now going to own CBS, CNN, HBO. I mean, you name it. And what they don't own, somebody else, some other oligarch or billionaire is going to own. And that's on one side of the fence. The other side of the fence is people like us that the interesting thing is we have almost all the tools. What we don't have is the big infrastructure. I mean, most of the people that we run across on Substack are broadcasting on their phone. They
Yeah.
don't have producers. They don't
Mhm.
have, all the things. And so what I should probably say right now, and this is something that my subscribers are somewhat aware of, that I have been trying to, make it so that I could simulcast and do all this stuff. And that's the reason for this platform, StreamYard, that we're using, and some of the other things. And um, one of my founding members was instrumental in helping me sort of achieve this first, you got it when you start building, you got to have that foundation. And I just want to give him his props. Dr. Eric Lulove, friend of the show, was very helpful financially and, helping me be able to go out and get StreamYard for a year. So I just think that kind of thing is important. And the reality is, historically, groups like ours, when we get started, Sherry, if you want to just kind of jump in, um,
Mhm.
that is sort of, how it happens, because as it turns out, people of color don't tend to command enough wealth to just launch something. But I'll let you take it from
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you wanna bring up your,
Yes.
slide on the progression of Black media, but we were just talking about this. We think about Black media, first of all, obviously, it goes back before Harlem Renaissance. We have the reporting on lynchings. We have, some really well-known publishers, but the key to that has always been patronage, right? The Harlem Renaissance, yes, there were these great Black creators, and we talk about that in isolation, but all of them had patrons, and their patrons were white. There's a story about Zora Neale Hurston's patron. She was very controlling and
Hmm.
overbearing, and literally nickel and dimed her on shoes. I'm like, not even kidding. It's just this crazy story. But so how do people who don't come from historical wealth or have access to historical wealth financially build their voices? And through all of this, it's dependent on some system of patronage, right? So the question I think you're trying to answer, Marlon, for us and for people on the platform, is how do we collectively come together, and how do we utilize the patronage that is available on Substack to change the value proposition that people may believe we each hold individually to what they might see us hold collectively? And then how do we also expand that out to others? Because you're up against, even on this platform, people who are heavily resourced. To your point, they have producers, they have lights, they have a cameraman, they have things that we don't have. And so and I always, I think Marlon and I are aligned on this. I don't begrudge anybody their subscribers, but I do wonder, does, the person with, 100,000 subscribers a month need 100,001? Like, can people look at other places to spend their dollars to support different voices who don't have access to that infrastructure? So,
Absolutely. I mean, and that's just to echo what you just said, coming from the world of, I don't mind a guy making $1 million on Substack.
yeah.
It's just that, like you said, it's who needs the resources the most. And when I first started publishing on Substack, they had some, sort of creator, almost like a incubator kind of thing.
Mhm.
Even then, I actually participated, not in the incubator. There was money involved there, but they even had like some groups where, people with a certain number of followers, and they would bring everybody together, or finance people or whatever. And a lot of that stuff has gone by the wayside, probably, and this is just my guess, because at this point, Substack is really on the road to um, doing what we would love to do, monetizing their value. So they're focused a whole lot more on they're focused on paid subscribers. They're focused on, things that are going to generate money. And
Well,
so,
and they're because they definitely court still the big money. They
oh yeah.
court those people coming out of legacy media who, quite frankly, bring with them large audiences. They have money for that.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I like this idea. It feels, revolutionary to me, like what we're trying to do here, because, Substack offers us a platform that does pretty much everything, right? The
Right.
chats, the DMs, all that stuff. You have notes, which is really valuable. But I think, coming together like this and kind of like pushing against the grain somewhat, because again, people like I'm overlooked all the time. You guys are overlooked all the time. All of us are overlooked all the time. And it's a lot of it has to do with one, you have a lot of people with name recognition. And, two, you have somebody who didn't really have that much name recognition, but they threw like millions of dollars at, Barry Weiss. And and look what they did with that. So, if we have to, do this on our own, then I think this is the way to do it. I feel really good about it. And my grandmother was a revolutionary, so like I'm always looking for revolutionary type of ideas, and that's what this feels like, So yeah, that's kind of why I was like jump in to both feet first, and I was like ready to go. Plus, I've known you guys for a long time, so it feels comfortable, it feels right, and I think it's going to push us all in the right direction. I think.
Well, that's the plan. Zuri, would you care to weigh in? I know. We've talked about this for a minute.
Yeah, we did. We absolutely did. And as Arturo is saying, when you told me about this, Marlon, I was very excited to be a part of it. We've had these discussions before where I felt that Substack sort of keeps a lot of us at this very comfortable level where we can't make a living out of it.
Yeah.
But we can't ignore the couple of hundreds of dollars that we get from it. So we're sort of just kept in this sort of like, I think, I don't know if it's a survival mode or something like that. And I've always, I think that there is strength in numbers and there's strength in us coming together, because a lot of our work, I've read a lot of our different work is very complementary. Puzzle. So I feel that, just being together and being in this cohort, there's this strength in our numbers, and if we can even grow and have more writers that complement our work, I think that it would be even more valuable. So just really strongly nodding and agreeing with you. I'm sorry, I'm not in the US right now. That's why I'm looking a little tired, because I'm visiting my mom in Europe, so it's quite late here. But all this to say that, yeah, I'm very much behind this and very happy to be a part of it and to be invited to be a part of it, because I think our voices are needed at this time. They're absolutely needed, and the coming together to do this is really an excellent idea.
Well, that was certainly the goal. And, from my point of view, we've all been on each other's shows. We're already cross-pollinating anyway. And so
Right.
to me, to formalize it and make it, sort of, a collective group that moved together just seemed to make sense to me. And so I think, and I just want to echo something that Zuri just said. And, I said this a minute ago, it's the beginning. It's not where we plan to stay. Obviously, there are other people out there, some who are not even necessarily people of color that we like. And, sort of, I think we all sort of share the same values. So, I'm hoping that it'll grow, but my thought for what this could be, and Arturo, you were talking about Substack, and Substack does. I mean, you get a lot of value, and that's why it's so hard to leave Substack, because it's sort of like, if I got to go out here and I got to, get my newsletter out and, I don't know, social media. I mean, I use Notes like I used to use Twitter. Well, I'm not going back to Twitter, Okay. So it has a package that has a lot of tools that are very useful, and at least at our size, it's worth the 10% that we have to give them. But at the same time, it occurred to me that um, what this can be is something that sort of sits on top of Substack, but is not limited to Substack. So, like right
Right.
now, we're streaming on YouTube, streaming on, I have a Facebook page for the business. We're doing that, and uh, this has the capability to, hit LinkedIn, Twitch, and a lot of other venues that I hadn't even really thought about. So that, in my mind, at least makes it so that if, God forbid, Skydance Media decides they want to buy Substack,
Yeah.
I don't want to. You know what? I wish I hadn't put that into the universe.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now that I said it, I would like to take that back. But no, seriously, I mean, you just think of what are the risks of just being bound to this one platform, whatever it is, right? I mean, like Twitter. I almost started doing my newsletter through Twitter because
Yeah.
they bought a newsletter company.
I
And
did.
before I could do it, Elon Musk bought it, and I was like, So those are the kinds of things that I think we can think of. And so one of the sort of proof points that I wanted to sort of make for myself was, can we use this platform and create a show it's not a Substack show. It's here. And
Mhm.
so Arturo and I have a show with no name, and it's gotten kind of popular on venues that aren't even Substack. And
Mhm.
so the vision in a way is there's no reason why Sherry and Zuri can't have a show, or if Sherry wants to
Right.
broadcast from here to everybody in her network. So if she doesn't have to go out and individually, get her own StreamYard, this is a collective effort that we can sort of build our little network this way, and and see where it goes.
Well, one thing I think, Marlon, you had talked about, I know you and I had talked about, and you have to be kind of older and I think steeped in early 80s culture, but it's
Okay.
kind of like the Wonder Twins. They would
Yeah.
they come together and form something new, but it's not just the twins. But I think the interesting thing is that we bring different, backgrounds. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you have your finance, Arturo has the decolonization, and Zuri has, combination of history and journalism. And then I also have journalism and history and law. And, together we cover a lot of ground. And I think it was interesting. I was watching CNN today, and a commentator said something I thought was very interesting. She was talking about the fact that there were American soldiers who've been injured that we just found out about. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know there was like over 100 some soldiers injured. And the question was, how were they injured? Right? We don't know. And then there was this previous discussion about the Russians telling Iran where American soldiers were. And she said she said, we need to put these stories together. But she was a commentator. She wasn't the reporter, right? Or the anchor, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was like, these are not separate stories. They need to, and that I think is the piece that is frequently missing from legacy media, is the putting together, the
Mm-hmm.
connecting the dots. And I think this cohort group has the ability to do that, to connect the dots.
I can
Yeah,
tell
that's
you.
one of
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Arturo.
that's one of the things I try to focus on too, because you watch a lot of legacy news media reports, whether it be about immigration, war, Latin America, there's always a missing context in there.
Mhm.
And most of the time, that little bit of context changes the entire story. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons I think why, journalists like us stand out, because we make those connections. And, it's the proverbial light bulb in everybody's head who reads our work. They're like, oh my God, I didn't even see that. And I get that a lot from a lot of my readers. So I think that's what's really the most important thing that we probably offer that you won't get from legacy media. And part of that is because we're not white centered. We're not, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to put the pieces together. So, why is Iran angry at us? We're going to look into that. We're going to talk about it. Why do Cubans not want the U.S. in Cuba? We're going to talk about that, and you don't get that in
Well,
legacy media.
yeah, it's one of those things that if you just and right now, Sherry and I were talking about this earlier. If CNN goes, then what else is there? CBS is gone. So to me, one of the things that happens is, like you said, nobody. I'll give you an example. This weekend, and this actually is related to the story that you just told, Sherry. This weekend, one of my former colleagues, he used to be on the trading desk that I ran. We talk all the time, and he's ex-military. He's in a situation where he's still working. He's sort of tangentially, connected to Wall Street still. He's a C-level guy at a company. It's not a public company, but the point is, he has a really, really deep Rolodex that goes across, contacts in media. And as you can imagine, other people that are in similar positions as he is. And he calls me up and we're talking, and he says, look, man, I just talked to, X guy who's in the military, and he's active right now with regard to Iran. And he said, Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, there's a hospital, where whenever we get hostages that come out of Russia or whatever, that's, if you notice, that's the first place they take them. And I think it might be the largest, facility, or the base is maybe the largest, not in the United States. And this guy told me Saturday, he said, the CIA has just taken a whole floor in that hospital, and they've designated it top secret so nobody will know, who's who, how many, whatever. And then we hear this story today. And as soon as that story came out, I hear a text, and it just said, told you. He had that information, and I really didn't do anything with it, because I'm sort of like, boy, this sounds for real, but I'm just a guy out here on Substack. I'm not going to put this out, but it turned out.
Well, Marlon, that's what we were just talking about too, about CNN. It's not so much that CNN is so great, but it's that it takes a network of resources to do a certain type of reporting. You don't just parachute into Iraq or Iran or, in a conflict zone. I mean, you can. There are some gonzo people who do it, but it's very complicated. The power of a network is the ability to move into spaces. And if all of those resources are hemmed up by the same two groups, and all of them are aligned with Donald Trump, then that's kind of it. That, it's very difficult to get information. We were talking about the fact that Fox News removed the hat that Donald Trump was wearing at the dignified transfer of remains of soldiers. They removed the hat. They found a different video and basically visually lied to people to pretend Donald Trump did not be disrespectful and wear a hat, which he did, a baseball hat, to this event. So if all of these larger networks who have the money to follow up on your friends, like, that's a great lead. Like, how do you follow up on that? That's what you need network money for. And if all the network money is tied up by basically administration loyalists, I mean, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
not good.
I think what we're really seeing, and I'm old enough to have lived through the times of communism, and talked a lot about, the agency, the TASS agency in Russia, in the Soviet Union at the time, that would just basically be the mouthpiece of the government and basically spread propaganda. And my perspective about Fox and many of these other networks they play this role of, just spreading the propaganda directly from the White House. And I think our role, because what I've been engaging in over the last few days, because I've just had this thirst to know what is really going on. I can no longer content myself with looking at CNN anymore, because it's just they repeat, 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 repeat. So I've sort of gone into some other networks, and some stuff on Telegram, where I've been trying to get the other side of the story, because that's that basically, just gets me out of bed every morning. Is I want to know the other side. I'm tired of the same white-centered side of the story ever since I was 13 years old in 19 whatever. So this is the role that we play, and Marlon, your friend, and that intelligence that he gave you, and I think each of us in our networks have those people, or can get in touch with those people who can tell us the other side of the story. And I think there's a lot of value in telling that other side and educating people about that other side. My worry, though, going forward, is I feel that the more that you tell the truth, the more your content will get suppressed. And that is a big worry for me at this point is, yes, let's use Substack as a launch pad, and let's, be on YouTube. But I think speed is going to be of the utmost importance to make sure we don't get bogged down by the algorithm. Because I feel point, I've been hearing that the US isn't winning this war. And I think they're going to become so desperate to make us believe that they are winning, that they will suppress content that shows us otherwise.
Yeah.
I
mean, they've shown that. I mean, when you take a man's hat off his head, that's suppressing content. I mean, that's wild to me as somebody who was a practicing journalist for a decade. That is the kind of thing that, sure, there have always been bad actors, but you would get in trouble in a newsroom. I mean, real trouble for doing something like that. And the fact that all gloves are off, there's no standards.
Well, there's always this mysterious young staffer that keeps making all these mistakes.
I mean, he up at the middle. He up at 2 a.m.
I don't know how this staffer is keeping the job, because that's what they said. They said, it was, and it's always a woman. They were like, the girl loaded the wrong video.
Yeah,
How in the world did she go get a video from his first term?
Yeah,
that's the same staffer who was up at night tweeting for Trump.
Right.
Probably.
Like,
yeah.
And they don't have a name. We don't know who they are, and it's just it's a mystery.
Yeah. So that's the thing you mentioned you mentioned something about, you heard Iran is losing, or the U.S. is losing the war to Iran, and that is a narrative that's out there, and it's interesting because Drop Site News, for example, has been reporting on a lot of U.S. losses, like the military bases, the radars, the damage, and all this stuff. And it really does look like we're taking some pretty heavy losses. Today, I think it was today or yesterday, Jake Tapper called Drop Site News propaganda. And I thought, the first thing that came across my, I think it was Ryan.
I mean,
Grimm.
this is Grimm,
CNN.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, no,
right.
Drop Site. Yeah.
And he called it propaganda. And
for who?
I just found it really interesting, because when corporate media says other stuff is propaganda and only their stuff is the right stuff, the true story, I feel like they're just trying to suppress the slaughter of innocent people. Like, we watched this with Israel for 2 years. We're watching it again with Iran, where they always talk about everything Iran's doing, the bad guy. Like, Iran's not attacking their neighbors for no reason. They're attacking U.S. bases and facilities in those countries, and those countries are participating. I mean, Iran is kind of sort of defending itself, right? And I'm not politicking for Iran, but that's the other side of the story that you're not getting. And, when you bring the truth is somewhere in the middle, and you can listen to Iranian propaganda, listen to the White House propaganda, and somewhere in there is probably the truth in between those two.
But it's difficult, though.
That's what Drop Site is trying to do. Right? Yeah, it is.
It's difficult, though, because when media, because I know the White House was mad at CNN because one of the reporters said, Iran is not, everybody's not running around in circles. People are going to work. And then the thing from the White House, and that crazy, angry young girl the filler in her lips. She was complaining, how dare you say that? That's a lie. So we're caught in an information quagmire between, you know, if they dare say, hey, you know, Iran's a big place and there are people going to the grocery store and living their lives. You're doing propaganda for Iran. And, you know, but on the same token, you just reveal all these soldiers were injured. So who do I believe? Because you seem like you lying. You know what I mean? And this is the hard part. And I think that is why, and I know that journalism is dead in its traditional format. But I still do think it's important, even for citizen journalists, to try to get as close to your source as possible. Because the more any of us flood the zone with things that are fake, the harder it gets. It's just getting harder and harder every day.
Taken seriously.
Yes, to take you seriously or to believe it. And I try very hard on things I can follow the line to, that I follow it as far as I can, because otherwise I'm perpetuating confusion. You know,
That's one of the things too. You know, we can keep each other honest. You know, and I was really, I knew when I came, you know, sort of this idea gelled. The three of you and Allie were the first people that I thought of. Y'all weren't the only ones, but you were the first ones. I was like, okay, Sherry knows journalism. And when we really, if this thing really kind of takes off, we're going to need somebody that can keep me from saying something stupid or doing something or writing something stupid. You know, I mean, let's just keep it real. I mean, I can get out there, but you know, at the same time, I come from a world where people don't know this and they have a real idea about what they think trading desks are like. And it gets wild. I'm not trying to say it doesn't, but we had rules, like you said, Sherry, that you get in real trouble. It's so funny, like the most simple license that you could get. One of the first rules in, like, you know, they have a section on regulatory stuff. Do not spread rumors. You spread rumors on a trading desk, you're gone. You're just done. But you can do it in the White House.
Yeah, I'm just about to say, now if you're the president, you can spread rumors and make money.
Something really interesting happened. I was talking to Ahmed Baba this afternoon. And when I got on, because I have Bloomberg television going, that's, to me, you know, I can get my finance stuff and it's pretty much straight news. They have, you know, they have the political shows and stuff where they bring politicians on, but they're pretty fair. And they're very, very accurate. So just as I come on, I see this pop up that says like the U.S. has escorted a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. And I'm like, okay. Now, I have an opinion on whether that matters for oil or not, but that's another thing. When I got off the call with Ahmed, I'm sitting here and I look and I see, I think it's still the same story. It's the White House denies that they said that they had done this. And I'm like, so apparently what had happened was, I think it was the Secretary of Energy posted on Twitter or whatever they're using. He posted this story and it's the Secretary of Energy. How can you not believe him? He says that 36 hours ago, so like yesterday, they escorted a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. The markets,
they're playing with the market.
Oil dropped precipitously. The stock market went positive. You know, all the different, you know, the dollar, everything. And the guy deletes it. Okay. And the White House says, no, I don't have any information on that. That didn't really happen. And you're just going, I just got to, what the fuck?
All
I mean, who in
the
world can imagine something like that coming out of the White House?
All bets are off.
But it did.
But you know, Trump did that, right? He said the
did
war
that
was going to end,
like in a week.
Just as the market was going to close in order to get the result. And people actually said it. Actually, finally, people said this on the news. Like, hey, I think he's trying to manipulate the market. You think?
He's been doing it. He's been doing it. I mean, think about this. When he announced, well, prediction markets, we've talked about this stuff a lot. And that's we'll get into it in a different show. But the point I'm trying to make is before every one of these big events, before he went into Venezuela, somebody got into one of these prediction markets and made a ton of money
Yeah.
just on knowing the time that it was going to happen, whatever. Same thing with Iraq. So somebody is out there playing that game. And it's, if something like that happened in the Biden or the Obama administration, and I would say even maybe the George W. Bush administration, I just don't think that would fly for a freaking minute. But this is kind of like a feature of being part of this, is just, get that money however you can.
Well, the problem I think we all face now is, now that the genie's out of the bottle, now that you can get away with it, we're going to be fighting it from now until this earth ends. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there was this point where people did not, but now that people know, unless at the end of this administration, there are these incredibly serious consequences, which I doubt it, because we as the United States are terrible with consequences. We don't do consequences very well for people. But other than that, I think now that people know they can do it, people are going to keep doing it.
You know what, Sherry? I would just say this, and it's probably hopeful on my part, but I look at what happened in North Carolina just this, last, the primary that we had a week ago, where there were 3 Democrats that, for whatever reason, had been voting with Republicans to help them override the Democratic governor's vetoes, which doesn't even sound right coming out of my mouth, but that's what these guys were doing. And all 3 of them got booted out. And I mean, in a fashion, like 50% of the vote, was the loss. And another one was 40. I think the third one was maybe, but double digits. Right. And so it tells me that people are mad. People are not happy, and they're not all just Democrats, because, this is March. So you got people that have been paying these crazy premiums for 2 or 3 months or losing their insurance. And this is the guy that was supposed to fix all that. And the whole idea of this war is just, anathema to everything that he's ever said. But, not to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I feel like, by the time we get to the presidential election, and I mean, there are a lot of assumptions just in me saying that, but I feel like there is something that's building in terms of, just the voters that are just sort of like that, that movie, I'm mad as hell and I ain't gonna take it no more.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if, we're not going to have any more of these Hakeem Jeffrey, Democrats that, he's really good at a rap tune, but, when it comes down to like serious, I think it was today, someone asked him if he would vote for, this additional money that they're going to want. I think it's $50 billion. He wouldn't say no. Now, maybe he has, clarified, but I just feel like the day of the sort of milquetoast, middle of the road, moderate Democrat is done, or it needs to be.
But the thing of it is, we can vote new people in, but unless we have consequences for the current people, new people gonna do it again, right?
Well, I feel like that has got to be sort of the litmus test. It's got to be. Because,
are you willing for consequences? Because I was going to say, Arturo, isn't that kind of a key of decolonization?
Absolutely.
It's stepping away from the current,
Yeah, I mean, you see, like Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil got 27 years in prison for trying to do exactly what Trump did. Those are consequences.
I never in a million years thought that, Brazil is going to show America how to do democracy.
Right. And then, you have other people paying some consequences, at least, for being in the Epstein files.
Yeah,
You don't see that here. And
all
I
over the
hate to tell
world.
y'all,
I'm-
like my work is read in like over 100 countries. So I hear a lot of stuff from other countries that I find pretty funny, but about us, because they think, how do y'all not know these things? But most of them really look at us like right now we're a country being run by billionaire pedophiles with zero accountability. You see Trump starting wars, violating international law, blowing up boats, all this stuff. We're just a rogue nation being run by billionaire pedophiles. And that's a lot of how the world sees us. And like, why would Iranians or Cubans or anyone want to be liberated by a country run by billionaire pedophiles? I mean, think
now that
about
you put it
like,
that
you know
way.
what I'm saying? So our image right now is not
Oh,
good.
I mean, even without the pedophile stuff, which I
Which
mean,
is
think
kind of
about it.
big, though. Which is
Think
kind of big.
Think
It
about it
is.
like this. You got a guy over in the UK that literally lost his title and
I
had to go
know.
find an apartment. They put this guy totally out. And I mean, so what do we say? So they overreacted? I mean, like that's what happened to him. We've had an ambassador to the US lose his job, get
Yeah.
kicked out of his party, and now he's, I guess, under investigation.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I read the other day somebody in like Lithuania or just some little country
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
don't even think about, and these people are paying a heavy, heavy price
Well,
But, you
there
know,
was
I guess
everywhere but here.
my
There was
question really,
high
my
ranking-
question for Zuri and Arturo, though, is both of you are coming from different, places and have connection to different places. I've started to wonder if, and I'm always trying to get kind of spiritual about this, but is part of this a necessary spiritual correction? In other words, people do need to stop seeing the United States the way they've seen us. They need to see us. We know we have good, but we have bad. And we are not this, whatever people have historically, the PR marketing campaign.
The myth of American
and
exceptionalism.
Isn't it kind of good for other countries to step into their power separate from
I
us?
think so.
In a way?
I agree. I do. I think so. I think it's beneficial for the whole world to recognize that we're not the benevolent society we claim to be.
Yeah, but
Because
I
I
think
think we do more harm than good when people think that.
I think there's sort of like a little bit of an irony, Sherry, to all of this, because I think Hollywood has done a great job over centuries, basically, of just showing the US as this, this policeman of the world, this moral authority. There's always this happy ending to all these stories. I mean, look at shows like Star Wars. Like what is the whole story behind Star Wars? Basically victory in the face of adversity and stuff like that. I think what's going on right now in the world is people like Donald Trump still believe in the US, in the exceptionalism, because when they say we're coming to liberate the Venezuelan people, or we're going to liberate the Cuban people, or we're going to liberate the Iranians, it's this exceptionalism. They still think that US culture is basically the best for every single person in the world.
Right.
And what we're looking at right now, and I think Arturo uses this word a lot, it's a multipolar world that we're looking at. We have superpowers like China and India and Brazil and South Africa. So it's a multipolar world. It's no longer a world where the US basically makes the rules and everybody needs to follow these rules. And yes, I think it's good for everybody to see what it truly is, which is really just a bully. It's a world bully. Not a policeman, but more a bully. And we're hearing about the conflicts in Iran and what they're trying to do in Cuba, which basically starve millions of people to death. I mean, how can you say that you are a moral authority and that you're a Christian nation if you're bombing, schools with young girls and starving people to death in other parts of the world? So I think people are beginning to see the very sort of evil side.
And to me, as an American, I feel like we have our, so there is a liberation element in the United States, but it comes from Black liberation. It comes from people of color liberation. It comes we have been the engines behind every liberation thing that people associate with the United States. And so also clarifying that for people that, you're thinking the United States, which when people say that, they think white people. That's just the bottom line.
Right.
And people have started to kind of see more clearly where they saw through a glass dimly before about the United States. And I feel like that clarity is in some sense a good thing.
One of the interesting things about everything that has just been said is that, and this is to me, the irony is that, all this technology that has made, certain folks billionaires is also responsible. It's democratized the field so that we can do this, so that there can be an Arab Spring, there can be a orange, a color revolution, and that sort of thing. And, I said a couple of months ago, I think that, that's what's happening here. When you think about Minnesota and some of these, when they went into Minnesota, I can tell you the ICE did not expect the reception that they got.
Right.
And people are just so, and that was seen all over the world, and I think if you just think about it this way, during the civil rights era, one of the catalysts that got the country behind the idea was when they started seeing on the news what was happening to Black folks in the South. And folks, even if they, and it's sort of like what's happening now, even if they weren't necessarily down with Black folks, they were like, well, now, wait a minute, man, sicking dogs on people and beating up children. I think that's where we draw the line. And so we have a lot more power maybe than we think we do. And I feel like, bringing together, smart people and minds like this, that, we all have our piece of the puzzle, right? And we don't have a ton of infrastructure, but we got this, and it's enough that we can tell stories and we can explain things like, well, why is it that Iran doesn't like us? Because if you listen to legacy media, you would just think they don't like us because they're evil.
No, they don't like us because
No.
we have freedom. Remember Bush? They don't like our freedom. Like, get out of here, man.
Well, they yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah. Well, it goes back to your colonization, though, right? Because we
Right.
went over there and destabilized their country, which
Well,
don't nobody talk about,
yeah,
and got rid of their structure because they were messing with our oil, and we created the conditions that create the thing. Now it's like. Yeah, I talk about this in my book. I talk about like the intellectual anti-Blackness in the United States, that Black people are so stupid. And what I would say is it's like a big brother slapping you and telling you stop slapping your face. Like you literally are doing it. Like, you're telling Black folks back in the day, you can't learn to read. They're saying they're dumb. Dude, you are creating the conditions. And it's the same with Iran. It's like, oh, they hate us. Although we also blew up their government, 40 years
and
ago.
took their oil and
50
gave it
years
to
ago.
BP.
Took their oil. I don't know why they hate us. They're so crazy.
What's their problem?
Right. It's the same thing with Cubans. You starve people for 60-something years and then you expect them to be your friend. Like, come on, man. Of course they don't want you in their country. You've been the bully for the last 70 years. Like, it's just crazy that a lot of what we see going on in the world comes back to the U.S. intervening or the West intervening in some way. All the problems in Africa, all the problems in Latin America, all of that has to do with the West meddling in everybody's stuff and keeping countries destabilized, because it's easier to rob them when things are destabilized. So,
well, there's a guy that I listen to a lot, Jeffrey Sachs, and he's I just think we got to watch out and protect this guy, because some of the stuff that he says is a little too true. But he talks
he's one of the fiercest white guys out there when it comes to like this colonization stuff. Yeah.
I mean, and he talks about. In fact, I saw one of these panel discussions where he started talking about America, and he went in, on all the things, to the point that the moderator was like, "Okay, that's enough."
You can say too much. You can say too much.
So just as we're closing in on an hour, I
sorry, Marlon Zuri was she got back.
I'm sorry, I missed you. Go right ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I worked quite a lot with Jeffrey Sachs because I did a lot of
Really?
public health in Africa.
Ah,
And he's always been, he's just always been this voice, sort of just, just speaking truth to power. And as a professor at Columbia and a white man, he of course has always been listened to. But I wanted to pick on what Arturo was just saying. With all these interventions, all this what I call interference that the West does in many of these countries, whether it's in Africa right now, Trump has, the troops, U.S. troops in Nigeria, or
Mhm.
U.S. interventions in Nigeria, for example. And this creates this anti-American sentiment, which I think becomes very dangerous for any American anywhere in the world.
mhm.
And that's just very, very scary to me. And as we talk about Iran, as we talk about Venezuela, and we talk about Cuba, I think what worries me the most is we are killing people's children, people's parents, dads, and what world, are we going to inherit after this? And is it going to be a safe world for our children and our grandchildren? And so Sherry was talking about the fact that there are no consequences for some of these vile behaviors in the US, but there are consequences for killing people's parents somewhere else in South Sudan or whatever. And this is what worries me about what this is going to manifest or turn into. Because talking about the successor to Khomeini in Iran, I read today, and we think we mentioned it here, his father, I believe, was killed by the US bombing. His wife, so many members of his family were killed. I mean, just imagine what that person thinks about the US at this point in time.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
the consequences we're going to pay, average everyday people.
mhm.
I need the people who causing me problems to pay some consequences.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that really, really worries me about what we're going to inherit when this bunch is, out of the White House, if they ever get.
Yeah. And
9/11 didn't happen, one night. Sorry, Arturo.
Right. No, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Nothing ever does. But this is where we get back to consequences, right? If there was consequences for Bush and for Cheney and for all these other people who lied to get us into 2 decades worth of war, millions of people died, $20 trillion, or I don't know how many trillions of dollars were spent, 2 trillion, something like that. It's just crazy that nobody paid any consequences for that. And if I'm not mistaken, George Bush is technically a war criminal. He could be arrested in another country, if I'm not mistaken, still. And
you
no
look at Henry
consequence.
Kissinger, you got a similar situation.
Right, right.
Yep.
No
This guy can't
consequences.
leave America, or he's,
Right. Right.
Yeah, the United States has never believed in consequences for some, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
this is something I talked about a little while ago, but it goes back to the end of the Civil War, right? Abraham Lincoln says, malice toward none. We're going to bring the Union back together. That was the first critical lack of consequence problem, because there needed to be malice toward many, and there needed to be consequences and punishment. And because there wasn't, as Heather Richardson has the book, the Confederacy never died.
Right.
Much of what we deal with today is the resurgence of the Confederacy, right? Because there were no consequences. There were no real consequences. And I think as a country, that would be the most radical, decolonized, liberating thing we could do after this.
yeah.
Not who we vote for, but who we punish. And I know that is not something we like to talk about, but who we punish could be the most radical thing we do.
I like to talk about this, Sherry. I'm not gonna lie, because I look at some of this stuff and I'm like, how is this person not just right now somebody coming in and just saying you're under arrest? I mean,
Yeah.
and you could, it's not just Trump, because they're, in a way, I hold the people around him almost more responsible, because you can see the difference in this administration and the first time he was in office. At least there was.
Oop, Marlon, you went
Marlon?
muted by mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
I bumped something. I got a little too his first term, there were, I didn't agree with their politics, but at least there were a few people around that would, they might not tell him to his first face. I heard a story about a situation. I think it was H.R. McMaster, where they were talking. I don't even remember. I think it was Venezuela, and this, its first term, and Trump was really, really wanting to know like the military plan, and he said, well, we got different things, soft power, and this and that we can do, and Trump just blew up on him until he said, well, okay, yeah, we'll come back with a plan for basically invading Venezuela. And he walks out, the meeting breaks up and everybody goes away. And John Kelly pulls him aside and says, don't do that.
Yeah.
And don't do it. He'll forget about it. He'll move on to something else. Well, now you got people that not only do not do that, they encourage,
Yeah.
the crazy. And they encourage, because a lot of this stuff to me, it tells me that I don't think he really knows how unpopular he is, because you got these people around him just telling him all this stuff. I mean, look, I think he always has known, because I see Sherry.
No, I'm just thinking.
I just don't think
I was
is getting the information.
I was reflecting, Marlon. I wonder if
I thought you were rolling your eyes at me.
No. I was just thinking. I was thinking. I don't think he cares what you and I think. I think Donald Trump is a type of a narcissistic personality that he just needs to be popular with the people he values. I don't think he cares if he's not popular with 80% of the public, as long as the 20% who have the money and power. I don't know if he has the capacity to care. That's what my face was doing.
That's a good point. I mean, I just feel like in terms of information about, for example, invading Iraq or Iran rather, I can't imagine I don't feel like he expected what has happened, how it's gone this, so far. I think he thought he just go in there and then the people would rise up and,
Yeah. But here's the thing is Iran is not Iraq, right? Iran is mountainous.
Not.
It's mountainous. It's much more heavily armed, much better equipped. You're not going to have Revolutionary Guard in Iran surrendering to U.S. troops or any of that stuff. It's going to be a fight, and I think they know. I think they know that.
Planning on this since the 70s.
Yeah, they know
they
that.
have been planning this for many a day, and so I agree with you. And just the idea that this is not one of those wars that you're going to win. Certainly not from the sky, but this is not going to be like, shooting missiles at people. And that's not when these guys have got all these drones and they've got Putin in their ear, giving up our, all our, logistics
locations
and all of this stuff. So it's going to be interesting. But here we are, people. I hope, thanks to everyone that showed up to hear what we're up to. I'm really proud. I have to be honest. I think, if it's just, even if it's just, this team, I think we got some real athletes. And so I'm looking forward to trying to build something that, I don't want it to be what, like a repeat of some legacy type thing. And I mean that in terms of how we function. I want it to be, a disruptor. And I think we got the right people to do that. And so at this point, I would just say, if you're listening and you're wondering how you can help, well, we have these things called subscriptions. and
each of us,
and each one of us has this thing where you can support our work by becoming a subscriber. You can become a paid subscriber, and if you really want to get crazy with it, you can even give more money than a subscription. So seriously, there are a lot of ways to help. One of the reasons that I wanted to kind of create a bridge that away from Substack is that if we build a big enough YouTube audience, people don't have to be commit to a subscription necessarily if they want to support the work. And there, there are many different ways you can approach that.
Marlon, how can people find us going forward as a us?
That is something that I'm working on. You would ask me. You're supposed to ask me that after we were.
No, I'm supposed to ask you.
You're supposed to text me and ask me that, Sherry. No, I've thought about that. I mean, at some point, what we're going to have to do is right now, the YouTube traffic, I goes to my YouTube page, but I think it's flexible to the point that if we want to set up a collective YouTube page, we can do that and figure it out. But that's the kind of things you're faced with when you're brand new. So we'll figure it out though. Or you can just trust me and I'll get all the money and I'll let y'all know what we made. And I'll just, I'll distribute it. And yeah, I know. Yeah, that's funny. No, seriously.
You do know that I also have an identity as an attorney.
Oh,
my many identities.
See, y'all, it's starting already. See, she just kind of laid that out there, didn't she? That last little card. I was wondering what it was going to be.
That's a good one.
Yeah. No, but seriously though, that is going to be, I think, the least, as far as I'm concerned, that's going to be the least of our troubles in terms of, doing it the right way. I don't know about you guys, but I've had the fortune to start a few businesses and fail at them. And so, and I've done okay at some other ones, but, when you get out there, I think it's almost a good thing to start a business and fail at it because you learn so many different things about why it didn't work out right. So I've been at it long enough that I know what we don't want to do. And we don't want to get like, usually it's going to be money. And so that's something we're going to address right away. Anyway, folks, thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
Sherry, thanks for reminding us that you're an attorney. Arturo. Look, I appreciate all three of you as well as Allison, and I'm really hopeful that we can do some good things and make some impact and in a good way. And I'm really looking forward to it, and we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
We will sign off, and folks,
Safe travels. Zuri.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely, Zuri. You be careful because you take care. I don't know what part of Europe is. Don't tell us. But but
keep it on the down low.
Yeah, it's crazy out there. But be safe.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.